we're all separate businesses, so sometimes we work in our own silos, but you guys obviously see the various trends of many studios. Like, are you guys seeing the same thing?
I call it like the bank account model, where you can deposit as much as you want as soon as you want to withdraw from the savings account. It's not so great, and that's especially true over the internet.
What is the best user experience? And we don't need to litigate that, but is it in office? Is it remote? Is it a hybrid approach? What's the internet speed? How's the pipeline working? Culture.
Well, this is what it's like. You gave me the tour through the FaceTime and said, if the fire goes out here, the doors close in whatever 30 seconds, and I'll die because it will be drained of oxygen. So it's like we don't have anything like that, and never would have. We never would have invested in that.
The demand are coming back. The studios are requiring that I need more rendering capabilities. I need the more workstations. Where do we end?
Welcome everyone. I am your host and your moderator, Wes Louis. Before I start, I'd like to thank Beanfield for making this panel possible, and to every Queso studio and other artists and staff for supporting the Queso and our industry. It's kind of hard to imagine that Queso is over 15 years now. I'm honored to be with the panelists today, being the co-owner of House of Cool for nearly 18 years and surviving many of animation and VFX ups and downs, including the stock market crash of 2008. I thought I saw everything, but with this COVID pandemic, we truly are living in uncharted waters. Studio owners today have to decide on many decisions they have to make on what work looks like at post-COVID. There's no doubt that COVID has changed the way in which we work. As COVID inches past us, or in fact, we have to deal with it, many studios have to rethink how business is done, how employees can work, and where they work at all. Studios have to innovate and use technologies to their benefits, and how do they decide on how they expand their growth, whether that's by adding more physical space, staying in the same space, or having multi-locations to handle various hybrid workforce models. Today's panel, we have some leading industry studio owners and industry professionals to gain some insights and their thoughts on trends that they're seeing and innovations available to VFX and animation studios. So without further ado, I'm going to ask every single panelist to introduce themselves and their companies, and then we'll get rolling. So first on my list is Frank from Guru Studios.
Hi everyone, I'm Frank Falcone. I'm the president and creative director of Guru Animation Studio. We've been in business for 22 years now, and from anything from commercials when we started through to service work on TV series, now to fully producing series that we own and distribute ourselves. And that's the range of work we do. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Frank. I love this studio name. It's one of my favorites. Monsters, Aliens, Robots, Zombie Studios from Jonathan Brodman.
Thanks, Wes. Hi, folks. Nice to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm Jonathan Bronfman. I'm the co-founder and co-president of Mars, as we're affectionately known. We're a Toronto-based tech and visual effects company that specialize in creature work for premium episodic.
Thanks, Jonathan. Wayne from CertNet.
My name is Wayne Kim. I'm the founder of CertNet, which is basically in a way I've commercialized both the Queso as well as the industry with the Sheraton College creating a network services for collaboration platform. That was done probably about 10 years ago, and we have commercialized it for the last 40 years to provide the platform or the collaboration of both the workload that will be all connected through the network, and we're partnering with the Beanfield to deliver that network, as well as the data center space where there is both the storage and the rendering capability to be able to utilize the resources at the time when there is extra resources that are required. So we have actually grown this platform from the initial phase of commercialization back in about 4 years ago to today. We have probably around 750 plus server farms, as well as a multi-petabytes of storage that is required to do some of the very high-end the rendering, as well as the series that is required. And at the same time, one of the things that we have done is creating a pathway for our studios and the CertNet users to be able to go on a Beanfield and a backend to be able to connect to the cloud. And this is one of the major transformation that we have done for the last 4 years.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Wayne. And last but certainly not least, from Beanfield, Ash.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ash Brar. I'm the Director of Product and Solution Engineering here at Beanfield MetroConnect. Beanfield is a facilities-based fiber provider offering service in the Toronto Metro and Montreal Metro regions. We are over 30 years in the business and have experienced rapid growth over the last few years, serving over, I believe the number is now a shocking 3,000 buildings across those two metro regions. So it's a pretty amazing accomplishment. We work really closely with customers in the VFX space, as well as strategic partners such as CertNet to, as Wayne eloquently put, bring the two together. We're really the facilitator. As we've gone through this pandemic and hybrid workforce transformation, providing the underlying connectivity for whatever model works for whatever, mode of operation your particular studio might be in.
Cool. Thank you, Ash. I really appreciate that. So I want to start off kind of at the beginning. When I say the beginning, I really mean like the end of COVID, so to speak, when people are starting to get back to work. And I would love to get Frank and Jonathan's perspective on, kind of some of the trends that you're seeing as people kind of slowly migrate back to the office, or maybe your student has decided not to come back to the office at all. And also some of the challenges that you've been facing as you see kind of moving forward. So maybe I'll start with Jonathan.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think one of the themes that people are talking about right now is the streaming wars. And I think a lot of people just think it's a talking point, but I can tell you from where I'm sitting, we feel it. And the amount of content being produced and the demand in our sector is huge right now. So that, coming out of COVID, people having been shut down from live production for 6 months and wanting to come out of the gates hard, but also realizing that trend's going to continue with some of the big players like Apple, Amazon, really just getting started. So what we've seen is a huge demand for artists and talent, and it creates pressure on pricing. It prevents us from meeting the demand in the marketplace. So one of the things that we realized and were enlightened to over COVID is that we don't just have to hire in Ontario. We want Ontario to be the strongest it can possibly be. What that means is we need the best talent. And for us, it has meant sometimes foregoing the incremental financial gain on the tax credit from a labor perspective in order to acquire talent that might be out of province or abroad. But what that does is it actually strengthens the talent throughout our studio and the local talent here in Ontario. So that approach that we've taken obviously comes with inherent challenges in working hours, in fluid communication and integration into our studio. But for us, at least, we haven't made any grand announcements about this, but I think this is going to be the norm moving forward. I don't see how a company that has a head of production like ours in LA and a CTO in Collingwood and my co-founder up in North Bay, Ontario, I don't know how we go back to the office. I think we have an office. People are welcome to be in our office, but now we're considering other avenues, like having an office, having our server room in our office, but expanding maybe into a co-location as opposed to a bigger footprint for desks on the floor. So I'd say, yeah, I'll let Frank step in, but those are some of my high-level thoughts.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I've got some, similar insights and some differing ones in terms of what's happened in the 2 years since we've been living in with the COVID quotient, with the COVID factor at play here. It's become the new normal. I don't think there is a return to normal. I think people have grown accustomed to working remotely. We've all been really successful at pivoting our workflow and accommodating what we needed to accommodate, which is people working in separate locations. And I think people are comfortable with that way of working. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have a studio component to the work we do. And I think we're all kind of craving and missing that face-to-face that creates accountability and human bonding that it's hard to do through little boxes. I love you all, but you all look the same when I had 20 of these a day. You know, it's like all yet another tile. It's like another Netflix box art on the screen. So I think we are definitely keeping a footprint, but we have made the decision early on in the pandemic to see that this was going in that direction. And we began to reduce our physical space. At the minute we had an opportunity to do that, we reduced our physical space. We work with our partners at Beanfield and other tech partners to build out co-location and to invest in a really strong backbone to further support people and ensure that we had, you know, the highest ability to serve data to people in whatever location they may be at. And so we've begun that process, and I think it was long overdue. I don't think buildings built to hold sewing machines were necessarily built to hold server rooms.
It's a good looking space though.
You know, we always did it because it's like, well, we want to be near our machines in case something goes wrong. And just like good shepherds, the IT team wants to be there to tend to their flock. But at a certain point, this has become a little bit of a commodity service, and we're not that unique. I mean, there's obviously some unique offerings, but when you have a good partner and they can, you know, provide that that secure space that is power redundant, has great internet backbone service, and has, you know, I was talking to my IT guy while we were setting up moving our hardware, because we moved all of our core infrastructure to this co-location. He was on a FaceTime and he said, well, you know, this is what it's like. He gave me the tour through the FaceTime and said, you know, if a fire goes out here, the doors close in whatever 30 seconds and I'll die because it'll be drained of oxygen. So it's like these we don't have anything like that, and never would have. We never would have invested in that in our facility, and it wouldn't be worth it for us to do that. And that's the kind of thing you really want, because you don't want to be worried about the building superintendent adjusting some pipes on the floor above you of your server room. These are the kind of things that you know, we long since wanted to move away from. And I think when you start to really commit to a really strong backbone infrastructure and invest in that, and as opposed to real estate, you can provide that kind of solid backbone infrastructure for people working remotely. The studio space, I think, becomes a place where people can collaborate, share ideas, review work, launch projects, train new people. It becomes a, you know, almost like an offsite. The way you do offsites at work, you do offsites from your home, and you get to see people, you get recharged, you get that energy, you get the bonding that you do. But do you need to do it every day? And do people want to do it every day is really the question. I think some do. Most we found in our sentiment surveys over the last 2 years have not been interested in returning to a daily, you know, commute to a studio where they sit side by side in uncomfortable air for the better part of the day and into the summers with flaky AC and with sunlight beaming down on them. You know, all the issues that none of us miss of being in studio, which is varying temperatures, demands. I want it colder, I want it hotter. Your lunch smells. I don't like your BO. You wear too much perfume. Like, those are things that, you know, will endure for a short period of time. When it becomes a daily grind, it's just not fun. In home, you can kind of tool out your kit and your environment the way you'd like. And when you come in, I think you're much more predisposed to want to spend time with those people. So I just see things as this is a major shift. And it's I give the analogy of my mom, who used to knit hats at home. And as a kid, I thought, yeah, she's knitting hats. These are things that were done in factories, you know, in the 20s and 30s, when people came into rooms and knit things. And, you know, she did it at home. They shipped her a bunch of yarn. She knit the hats. She put them back in a bag. They picked them up. This is, you know, like the Uber factory of the 1980s. And, you know, and it was piecework. And she was happy to do it at home because she didn't want to go anywhere to do this work. She wanted to do it from home while she could take care of dinner and watch some TV. And she could do it really without even looking. She was really good at it. So she'd sit and knit and watch Jeopardy or something. So I think people of that sort of style of working is becoming commonplace now. And I think anything that is an inbox style job, people are happy to pick that work up at home. And that does do a lot of the things that you were mentioning, Jonathan. Is allows you to hire far and wide. The tax credits become hopefully not a shackle on our business, but an ability to help us to attract talent here. But it is a very competitive environment for talent at the moment. but I do believe the streaming wars may just have come to an abrupt end, in my experience, in the last week, as I think Netflix is really pulling back on their spends, and we may not see the streaming war continuing as it has been for the last few years. I think we're coming out of a pandemic when people are looking to start to cut costs on their many subscriptions. They're looking to get back out into the world. Inflation is putting pressure on people's household spending, and we may just be seeing the peak end of the streaming wars. So we may be entering a different time for all our businesses, and I certainly felt it this past week.
Yeah,
if I may, just to echo a lot of what Frank was saying, we talk a lot about user experience in our office, and the user experience being the people that are working in our facility. And I think, Frank, you touched on a lot of that, like what is the best user experience? And we don't need to litigate that, but is it in office? Is it remote? Is it a hybrid approach? What's the internet speed? How's the pipeline working? Culture, those are all part of the user experience. I respectfully don't share the view on the streaming wars. I think I take the Netflix point. I don't think Netflix is going to be the predominant force in the streaming wars. I look more towards an Amazon type model, where Amazon don't really care about you watching stuff on Amazon Prime. They just hope you get goods and shipped to you, and in return you get a free Amazon Prime account.
We could talk about that all day, but we have different topics to talk about. So as a moderator, I have to reel this back in a little bit. But thank you guys for your insights.
You can edit that out.
Yeah, no problem. No, I love it. It's funny that you guys say that, because I remember when we first started our business, it was all about the people and bringing the people together and all that kind of stuff. And it's over the years, as we've gained experiences and artists have grown older and had their own families and houses, Frank's right. They want a better balance, and I think that we were all searching for that. And I think it took a pandemic for us to push us over the edge to get there. So pushing us over the edge to get there, we obviously need, and hearing both of you guys talk, the technology needs to be in place there, and the pipelines need to be in place there. And this is where I really want to hear from Wade and Ash. Like, what are some of the solutions that you guys are seeing that, whether it's in our industry or in other industries, that are really helping studios and businesses get moving? And I'd like to know like how that affects their employees as well. So maybe I'll start with Ash.
Yeah, it's been an interesting last couple of years with, I'd say, the shift of bandwidth and traffic flows that you're seeing, right? From everybody being concentrated in business centers to now working remote. What I'd say Beanfield's been doing in general to sort of respond to the changes and the demands, bandwidth consumption is just growing, right? Everybody wants more bandwidth all the time, and they want it in more places. I think one of the major milestones that we've crossed over the last year is the introduction of a 400 gigabit backbone network, and that's both in our Toronto and Montreal areas. That's quite an achievement for a company of Beanfield's size, and really it's an anticipation of that continued growth. We need to support that kind of bandwidth in our core and our backbone to be able to offer higher bandwidths to last mile, right? So 1 gigabit may have been the talk of the day a few years ago, and it moved to 10 gigabit, which is a pretty standard type of point-to-point connectivity. And now we're moving into 100 gigabit. So in terms of point-to-point style technology, that's something we've been rolling out in the last year, where we are able to offer from a lit service perspective, so not a dark fiber, but a lit service, 100 gigabit metro wavelength services. So, as your production houses ramp up, as you start to get demands to turn, content out faster and faster, there's more data you need to move, right, at higher resolution. So, that faster connectivity that will facilitate between the studio, your data center, a partner like CertNet, or even the cloud, whichever direction you go, or maybe it's all three, we're there to facilitate that. To the point that Frank made earlier about moving infrastructure into a co-location. It's funny. I thought a few years ago that the demand for colo space, for actual secure space would sort of level off, seeing the advent of cloud. But it's a funny thing. We've seen a huge demand increase spurred on by the pandemic for colo space by organizations that were not really ready to go full-fledged into cloud, right? There's a hybrid model that's really still viable and makes a lot of sense for different enterprises, depending on where they are and what their use cases are. So we've recently opened up a large amount of space at 35 John, right in the center of Toronto, in addition to our existing space that's available at 905 King and whatever's left at 151 Front, being such a popular destination. So, we're trying to look at both avenues, right? So if studios are looking to leverage the cloud, maybe they're going to start off entirely in the cloud. We'll facilitate that. Could be just internet connectivity, could be high-speed point-to-point on-ramp connectivity, or if they're working with partners such as CertNet, we'll certainly facilitate that as well. So to summarize, really, I'd say it's been about supporting the bandwidth demand and ensuring that our footprint addresses where the clients are. Right, we have to be in those regions, we have to be in those areas for not only the clients, but the partners that they use, such as CertNet, right? So we want to be dense in those areas to be able to quickly turn up connectivity, which is a hallmark of Beanfield, right? We're known to turn up on-net connectivity in 5 business days. So if there's something that all of a sudden requires high bandwidth and your teams, Frank and Jonathan, and need to turn that around, we're there to help, right? That's what we want to do. That's what we want to facilitate. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ash. There's a lot to digest in that one. Wayne, I'd love for you to add on to that.
Yeah, you know what? I think what Frank was talking about, what Ashley was talking about, what Jonathan is talking about are all valid and viable. And people are changing the way they are deploying their infrastructure requirements and so on. So we've just noticed for the last, probably during the pandemic, just pre-pandemic and the pandemic period, the studio was wanting to, build, their infrastructure as they were launching VFX houses, the studios, and then they decided they're not going to build inside their, the space that they actually own. They wanted to go to the data center where they actually are able to, number one, have a secure location, as exactly what Frank said. Number one, the secure space. Number two, its power is always up and running there. And it's run, and the connectivity is available right on at the fingertips. In terms of what Ash talks about, 35 John, that's where the CertNet infrastructures are located, and we're directly in a way we have like 128 strands of fiber directly connected from Beanfield to us, so that as many studios are able to connect, like we don't have to go through a lot of the hooders. We're just connected. So we actually have a patch panel between us and Beanfield to be able to accommodate those kind of changes. Second thing is that we actually did the same thing what the Beanfield done. We filled our data center because of some of the studios that are coming in and says we want to shut down our the IT infrastructure that exists. That's what Frank said. Move to the area where we don't have to worry about it. And they actually put not only the server farms and so on and the storage, but actually have workstations are also located there as well, so that they actually have a Teradici and the remote access and still be able to do everything that they needed to do in terms of the artists being able to do what they need to do. And then they actually have, using a Beanfield from the 10 gig connection from the internet perspective, they have a direct connect between layer 2, between their offices to our data center, and CertNet connectivity. That that is essential part of the infrastructure. On top of that, and so we actually had to go ahead and build another expansion of the data center to build out another like 30 rack space for our expansion that we had to do. And then as we're looking at is that the demand are coming back. The studios are requiring says I need more rendering capabilities. I need the more workstations. Where do we end? so one of the CertNet has done is that we continue to upgrade our server farms to be able to accommodate for those VFX houses looking for additional rendering nodes, and before they actually are able to jump off into the cloud. So there's a hybrid model that we are able to do up to maybe 750 server farms that we have locally that will be able to serve to the community. But also we did exactly the same thing. They have a 35 John is on-ramp to AWS Direct Connect that allow us to be able to connect directly to AWS so that they have a hybrid model. They'll be able to utilize their own infrastructure, which is sitting at the data center, and they'll be able to, overflow of the requirements are coming to CertNet. They're using that platform, and then some of the requirements that they have, we are not able to meet. They're actually connecting through the Direct Connect, not through the internet, but Direct Connect fiber into the 10 gig into the AWS and using that resources and reduce the latency that is needed to make sure that all of both the artists who are working on workstations as well as the rendering as well as anything else. So the whole what we call it the paradigm of this is my four wall, this is my infrastructure that I own, and so on are completely changing now. And we have a number of studios that actually has come into our data center and are utilizing that hybrid model. And yes, they do still have their offices with some the infrastructures, but none of those what we call the data center that they built inside their offices are slowly disappearing. So, and this is a key I think we're talking about is that how can we as a community, CertNet, we are able to work with the Beanfield to be able to provide that connectivity so that the collaboration can happen between 6, 7, 8 different studios working on the same, whether it's a Star Trek, whether it's a Game of Thrones, whatever else that's going on, that they'll be able to work it together to make the collaboration happen. So I think CertNet is here, and we are always listening to the requirements that the studios are asking us, and then we're trying to transform and change. But one thing is for sure, it's the traditional data center that was in the studios are moving to the what we call the Beanfield or a CertNet type of data center, and then they're looking for the connectivity out into the resources where that exists, whether it's the artists who are doing the actual work, as well as the rendering capability that is needed, and just in time, the resources that are available in the cloud. So I think that's the new paradigm and changes, and that's
great.
And Frank and Jonathan has already gone through that process. So.
Yeah, and speaking of it, it's funny because when people say hybrid, it's usually they mean their employees are being hybrid between coming to work and working from home. In our case, it's hybrid of using both co-locations or space versus as on the cloud. And I'd love to know, just from the overall panel, when does a studio decide to use their hardware versus going to the cloud in your experiences? Or when is the most optimal time that you guys are noticing?
I like April. April's a nice time because birds are, it's the
I was
air
gonna say
is
May,
fresher.
but
No, I think that's a good question, and I think you're constantly doing the math, and there's really no other way to get that answered than to do the math and look at your investments and look at your expectations. Most productions have a life cycle of, in the TV business, about 18 months, to 24 months. Maybe some VFX cycles are shorter, and you have to just look at your ability to invest in this equipment or the economics of borrowing to invest in this equipment, and whether you're going to get a properly amortized and efficient use of that equipment. I think there's all kinds of models. There's people who want to low entry and low impact entry into the industry that can just go the lease route and just go the AWS route. I find that proves to be quite expensive and not necessarily the best route for all of your for computing needs. I don't think once you get it in the cloud, it's expensive to take it back out, as some studios have discovered accidentally. It's easy to upload it, much harder to get it back out. Try it with Apple. The minute you go to your download speeds, when you upload your images into the cloud, try to pull them down at full resolution and see how they throttle you down. It's just a business model to vacuum it up into the cloud faster, and then to bring it back to you, you got to pay. So it's just, once you know that, you don't want to jump into the cloud too early before you've done the math of taking it back out of the cloud. That's why having a local solution, having partners locally in Toronto is really excellent, because we get to do some of the investment, but not the full investment in housing the equipment, which is really critical. It's as critical as anything, the real estate. And also just consolidating it is interesting, because you're bringing up an interesting point, Wayne. It's like, it's kind of like your car that has a large battery and you can go start charging other cars. This is a thing that's happening in the automobile field, like people giving back to the grid from their power. If you have some equipment, you could put it back into the grid for downtime for other studios when they need like additional workstations to spin them up. So we're looking at VDIs now, and we started toeing in those waters. Obviously, it's a slow process. We're not throwing out all our workstations, but ones that are amortized and done, we're sort of putting them out to pasture. And instead of investing in new workstations, it's an old format. It's desk side. It's supposed to be around a 6-foot desk. No one's using those. Why are we investing in a form factor that is separated across a studio when we can consolidate those workstations and serve them up the way servers serve video games to MMOG? Like you serve it out to people. So we're taking all that equipment that was scattered and distributed and creating heat in a space when people wanted to be cool, all that inefficiency of like blowing cold air on a machine that's generating hot air, take all that out, put it in a room, and serve it out efficiently and effectively anywhere, even back into your studio if you want. To me, it makes a lot more sense. And I'm glad in some ways that the pandemic happened, because we wouldn't have done it voluntarily, because everyone's always like, oh, not this year. I don't know, it's the big thing. Who wants to move their server room? Nobody. Like, nobody wants to sit there. No IT person is going to go, hey, I propose we take our server room and move it this weekend. Like, they're like, what? Why? Like, it's hard to justify. But once you see the value of it in experience, it's been a really good thing for us to have made those decisions. And I think that's it's just look at the numbers and look at when it's time for you, and do it bit by bit, chunk by chunk. Don't do it all at once, and certainly don't get too trusting of the AWS cloud, because it is a big beast. As you pointed out, Jonathan, they are just serving us video files for fun as a bonus. They can afford to serve video files for fun. Netflix is failing as a business, and they're like, yeah, we're going to give you some cool shows as a bonus. Buy some paper towels.
Yeah,
like,
I couldn't. I agree fundamentally with everything Frank just said. It is purely math. We all know that the work ebbs and flows with respect to the demand on storage and on render power. So having that strong infrastructure on site, but then providing yourself with the opportunity to burst and pay a premium to burst when you're really in a pinch is, to us, what we've identified as the optimal model. The other thing I would add in, the only other thing I could really add to what Frank said, is supply chain stuff. It's not, the hardware is not readily available right now, and it's caused us pain, and to the point where we literally have our IT guys all over the place, all the distributors and providers of the hardware that we use in our shop. As soon as it becomes available, it gets off the ship, we buy it. It's that crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I feel like, mature businesses like yourselves, they can able to get to that level. What I'd like to ask maybe Wayne and Ash is, for new businesses, what are you guys noticing on your new studio trends? Are they trying to buy computers and servers, or are they actually going directly to the cloud? Like, what has been your experience?
So we actually had one studio just started, and then they were looking at it saying, should I go to cloud? Should I go buy? Should I have some investment that I could put it in? So I think one of the, they came to us to say, what's available, where can I put some of the, if I invest some money, how can I actually, so this is a limited amount of cash I have. This is what we like to do. How do I get to A to B to C, and then and ultimately I'll be able to generate revenue and pay for all these things. So one of the things that we have done, which is I think somewhat innovative, is that they're a startup. So we said, okay, so how much money do you have? They said X. That is a fraction of what they need to do the production for one of the other shows that they were given. So we said, okay, so you don't have a credit, you don't have anything. So CertNet will actually help you to get the credit, get the financing is needed, and put those infrastructure in and build a data center in our space so that you could launch the VFX house. And they did, and they became extremely successful. So it's a case of where, you know, not only CertNet has it was a partnership that we done where they actually put some of their skin in the game, and we put our support in terms of data center space, and also some of the infrastructure they needed. As you said, Frank and Jonathan, it's all about math. So instead of trying to go to cloud and spend all that money and disappearing, is there a way for them to be able to put together the basic infrastructure so that they will be able to operate and the show? And then that's what we did. And we funded them, I think it was like $500,000 of leasing capability so that we could actually build that infrastructure plus their investment that they put it in, and 3 years amortization to be able to start that process. And then they're connected through the Beanfield, you know, the CertNet connections and internet connections and so on, and they moved to their, you know, space, and today they're doing extremely well. So that is the sort of the hybrid model where I would recommend. If you don't have anything to start, I think the cloud is the least expensive, but it's also least costly way of doing your business.
Cool, thanks, Wayne. I didn't even know these types of services existed in Ontario. So I'm learning stuff with this. That means I'm sure everybody in our audience are learning new stuff. So Ash, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, you know, it's great, just to follow up on what Wayne was saying. It's great to have local providers that are able to facilitate up and coming studios in the way that Wayne just described. So that's a fantastic story. I think, you know, what you touched on at the end there, Wayne, where the cloud is the cheapest, at least to start. You know, we put a significant amount of investment a couple of years ago into building a network to areas where there were cloud sales, let's call it. Does anybody remember the AWS spot market that, you know, it still exists, but I mean, you know, the rage was to buy really, really cheap compute in AWS regions where they had spun up all this facility, but they didn't have customers yet, right? So we actually invested a few years ago to build directly down into the US East 1, which is in Virginia, and US East 2 regions for AWS, which is in Columbus, Ohio, because in situations where you have a studio starting up and they decide to go in the direction of, okay, we'll put our money into the artists and maybe we'll just start a little bit with the cloud without investing, you know, in infrastructure, but we'll need connectivity, right? We'll need connectivity, fast connectivity, where it's not internet, because Frank, the analogy you used was great. I like to call it like the bank account model, where you can deposit as much as you want as soon as you want to withdraw from the savings account. It's not so great, and that's especially true over the internet. With direct connectivity, like what we built down into those regions, the costs are one third of what you would pay typically over the top over the internet. So we did see quite a few studios taking advantage of that as they sort of spun up operations and figured out what the right balance was. And, you know, I'll echo what some of you have said is, you know, they did start that way. And then I saw them, you know, literally over the course of a couple of years, grow, mature, and then switch, right, to having sort of local facility and then adopting a nice balance, right, like a hybrid balance that kind of works for them and whatever cadence that they're in terms of their production, you know, output. So it's, you know, I'll say it again. You've all said it. You have to do the math for your particular situation, right? I think it's gonna vary based on how you're starting up. But you know, at the end of the day, we hope to sort of facilitate that connectivity, whether it's with really valuable local providers like CertNet, local partners like CertNet, or if it is going to be one of the big guys and you're going to use the cloud, we'll facilitate that as well.
Well, thanks, Ash. I really want to touch upon one more question before we end off here, and we don't have much time. And it's really I feel like after this conversation, it's going to be a simple answer, but let's see. What do you guys feel will happen to your space when the leases are up? Do you feel that you guys are going to, decide to go into a smaller space, keep the same space, or possibly expand? Because I'm assuming that, much like our business, we actually have more bodies outside than we can actually fit inside our studio, right? And that's kind of the way we're working. And when your leases are up, are you guys thinking that it's time to go studio-less, or hold a small footprint that's 1,000 square feet or whatever that is? So maybe I'll let Jonathan take the floor on that one.
Yeah, I think for us, and I'm sure every case is unique. For us, we have way too much space, but at the same time, we invested a lot in the infrastructure in our studio, thanks to Beanfield for connecting us. But we would
every single time you mention Beanfield, you get a 20% discount too.
They served lunch here today, by the way, as well. But no, we're going to try to. We have a lot of space. We're going to try to tighten it up. We want to provide people the opportunity to come into the office to the extent they want to, but we could probably chop our space in half, keep the server room, keep the infrastructure, still have desks, and go remote for the rest, and co-location.
Yeah, cool. Frank?
Yeah, it's a complicated question because we do want to encourage people to meet in a way that's responsible and safe, and we're not out of the woods. I'm just reading on BA4 and BA5 coming out of South Africa last week. Like it's here it comes again. Like I think that we're living with this, and so we have to be responsible and not put expectations on our staff that would make them uncomfortable or unhealthy or force them to do commutes that they've now that are not part of their day to day. That said, we do want to provide the tools, the space, and the a workflow that would make sense. Where it gets complicated is when do you come in, who comes in when, who needs to be there when for who. And the minute you start asking those questions, you get into the freedom evaporates of like, come in whenever you want. Well, that doesn't really work because I want to come in when Ash is in. I want to speak to Ash. I don't want to come in the hope that somebody's there. I want to know that Ash is going to be there so I can speak to him because I got some things to go through with him. So that then mandates a company to force the senior people to come in. There's no other way, really. You can't just say, well, come in whenever you want, Ash, because Ash will come in on a Saturday, and everyone tried Monday to Friday, and they didn't see him. So once that starts to happen, the logistics, which become really complicated, and you have to start to be responsible if you're asking people to come in sometimes to make sure that you're there and available, and have leaders who often have family and have possibly moved away because they tend to be older generally. A lot of 21-year-old leaders out of school. A few, but not many. You need experience. And so your experience comes with less inclination to come down to a studio. So that's where things get really complicated, because you need to mandate some degree of presence in a space for it to be worthwhile. It's not the bricks and mortar that we're looking at. We're looking at how it accommodates our interactions with other people. And so that's a work in progress. And what I'm doing, which is working for us, I think, is it's as a per need basis. It's like, as you need it, you let me know and we spin it up, just come the way we spin up workstations. We spin up space or we spin up meetings. And if there isn't any demand, then we will no longer do it. If we're producing effectively and people are enjoying what they're doing and there is no need to meet and the quality is good and the business is strong, then I don't know if that will continue. It'll continue based on people's demand to see other people. And that's the only way to do it. And then we'll mandate if people want it, but we're not going to sort of force people to go in and sit at a computer and Zoom call with somebody in another office on the same floor. I think that's just like inane. And we're not doing that.
And Ash and Wayne, I'm sure you guys, we're all separate businesses, so sometimes we work in our own silos, but you guys obviously see the various trends of many studios. Like, are you guys seeing the same things as leases are coming up? What are you guys noticing?
Yeah, I think what happened is that, you know, and the certain that last 2 years, we're working from home. This week, today, yeah, I think it's today, which is Tuesday, was the first day that our actually team, what we call it, we have a different teams, and we have more people than we could accommodate in the space. And during the pandemic period, we actually gutted our office and then created the the co-working space type of environment where people will be able to come in and do what needs to be done, completely redesign the space. And I think that's the new trend. I think it's but at the same time there has to be some sort of collaboration of people that they want to be able to face and so on. So as Frank said, there has to be some wisdom behind this, how to return to work. And so we had the senior executive team basically sat down and thought about it and think about it and said, you know what, I think the team needs to work together as a group, not as a whole company. So as long as they have a plan to get together on Tuesday, as you said, is Ash going to be there or not? So is that they have to know that the team members are there so that they could collaborate as a part of the group and various different groups, and they all decided on what days they would like to get together as a part of the group decision. And then we basically open up spaces that allow the enough social distancing, but at the same time collaboration can be happened. So we did that, and other studios are going through the similar. I think they what Frank and Jonathan said is that they're going through the similar things, and because of that, I think there's not enough people in their own office to manage the data center space that they built, and somebody got to be physically there to be able to do these things. So I think that's where they would like to move away the technology and then have it managed in a secure location and be able to be providing that, and then the space is where the collaborations and the meetings will happen. So I think that's what we've seen it, and that's we're doing it, and there's no magic because we have this is we're just experimenting right now. So we'll see what the outcome looks like.
Thanks. And I'm going to give the last word to Ash.
Wow, I mean, I feel popular. Everybody wants to be in the office with me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, without sort of repeating a lot of what everyone said, I do agree. I think the one thing I wanted to pick out was something Frank said about, you don't want to be in the office and be on a Zoom call with somebody that's next door to you. So I think the way you approach working together and how you collaborate has to be rethought. It can't just be a random schedule that you make. Okay, 2 days this week, 3 days next week. I think it has to be meeting with purpose. It has to be meeting with intention, so that the people that you want to interact with are all there at the same time, right? You don't have this like fragmented approach with somebody on a Zoom call but everyone else there, right? So I think that's the way sort of we've been trying to adopt it to the new reality here at Beanfield. It's a big experiment. Everyone's in a big experiment right now, and I think we're learning as we go. And then having the tools which have really changed the way we work, such as collaboration tools like Zoom, etc. It is key to facilitating and making all of that happen. So it's an experiment. That's how I'll end that.
Awesome. Cool. Well, that's all the time we have, guys. I really want to thank you guys all for your time. This has been incredibly insightful, and I hope the audience has gained as much valuable knowledge as I have. Lastly, I just want to say thank you to Beanfield for being a wonderful sponsor to us. And again, thank you for the panelists and all the CAISO members for being around and sticking with this industry. And I really, really, really think that we are, like, I think Jonathan mentioned this before, we have an incredible amount of body of work that we can capture here in Ontario. And it's good to see these leaders like Frank and Jonathan really leading the charge and having these technology plays and be able to communicate with Beanfield and Wayne. So thank you very much, guys. And this will conclude our session. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Wes.
All right, boys, that's it. Thank you very much, guys. And you can start.
We're
Thanks so
done.
much.
We're done.
That was great, guys. I
Yeah,
learned a lot
thank you. You
today
guys
as well.
had some great. The only thing I wish is that we were all nodding our heads, but you couldn't. As whoever's
see
talking,
it.
they're not going to be able to see that, right?